This programmer built an entire operating system from scratch to talk to God. Imagine an operating system that looks like it was designed by a Windows 95 cult leader, running entirely on divine intervention and sleep deprivation. No internet, no memory security, 16 colors, a hard-coded 640x 480 resolution, and it boots directly into its own custom programming language where God literally talks to you through a random Bible verse generator. Everything you have been told about how software development works, the massive team, the $billion budget, the corporate design meetings, it is all irrelevant here because this was built by exactly one guy in a van who wrote 1,20,000 lines of code from absolute scratch and obviously without AI. This is TempleOS, and today I'm going to show you why the most unhinged operating system on the planet might actually be the purest, most fascinating piece of technology ever made. To understand the absolute insanity of this operating system, you have to understand its creator first, Terry A. Davis. Back in 90s, he was writing massive enterprise systems at Ticketmaster and even working on wax machines. He was objectively a genius, but then severe schizophrenia completely derailed his life. He ended up homeless, living in a van, and spending over a decade hyperfixated on building an entire operating system from scratch. All because he believed God commanded him to build the third temple digitally. And you know the craziest part of all of this? This operating system is actually good. If we talk about its architecture, modern operating systems are built entirely around the concept of distrust. They separate user application from the core kernel, because users are chaotic little goblins who will inevitably click on free Robux not a virus.exe. Everything is sandboxed, everything is protected. But TempleOS throws that entire philosophy out of the window. It runs entirely in ring zero. For non-nerds watching, that means there is absolute zero separation between an application and the deepest core of the computer hardware. Every single program gets full unrestricted hardware access. And there is no memory protection, no sandboxing. Any app you run can instantly crash the entire system or even overwrite anything in memory. Which sounds like an absolute nightmare, because it is. You know, from a cybersecurity perspective, this is horrifying, but from a philosophical perspective, it is weirdly beautiful. Terry believed there should be no barriers between man and the machine. He wanted total transparency. It is like riding a motorcycle at 100 km per hour without a helmet. If you lean too far, you die. But man, you feel the winds in your hair. Visually, this entire operating system is logged to 640 into 480 resolution with exactly 16 colors. Why? Because Terry believed that was the exact resolution God wanted. No HD, no GPU acceleration, no modern UI frameworks, just raw VGA graphics that somehow evolved into one of the most recognizable aesthetic in computing. It looks like an alternative timeline where computers evolved from arcade machines instead of sterile corporate design meetings. And even the 3D graphics are rendered entirely in software and somehow still look sick. But the real magic of TempleOS is what powers it. HolyC. Yes, that is the actual name of programming language. Terry didn't just build an operating system, he built a middle ground language between C and C++. But here's the kicker. It is just-in-time compiled, meaning there is no main function required. The command line shell of TempleOS is the HolyC compiler. You can literally type C code directly into the terminal and it executes instantly. Want to make a game, type the code, run it immediately. And if there is bug, pause the game, modify the source code while the game is frozen in memory, recompile it, and continue playing instantly. Even billion-dollar game engineers struggles to do that seamlessly even today. And this is one guy in van talking to God through random number generator, making it look easy. This whole operating system is basically one giant live coding sandbox where you can communicate directly with the computer's nervous system. Now, if you build your own operating system and your own language, you obviously have to build your own file system, right? Terry created RedSea, a custom 64-bit file system that is delightful, almost aggressively simple. It has no fat table, just an allocation bitmap. Files are stored in completely contiguous blocks, meaning they sit right next to each other perfectly in memory and they cannot grow in size once created. You might think, well, that is a flaw. Nope. Terry explicitly stated that it was a feature. He wanted to preserve the toy spirit of the OS, like a modern Commodore 64. Because contiguous blocks are used, loading whole files into the memory is blazing fast. And TempleOS had intentionally no networking support whatsoever. No TCP IP stack, no Ethernet drivers, no Wi-Fi. Terry believed the CIA was actively monitoring him through the internet, which is deeply tragic. But ironically, because it physically cannot connect to a network, TempleOS is technically most secure operating system ever made. Hackers can't steal your data if your computer literally doesn't know what a router is. Then we get to the part that sounds like a fever dream. The Oracle. TempleOS contains a built-in feature where you ask God a question. Hit the F7 key and it uses a stopwatch feature acting like a digital Ouija board to generate pseudo-random words from King James Bible. Terry believed these were direct messages from God and he even used them to make actual architectural development decisions. Imagine it is 3 a.m. you're debugging a catastrophic memory corruption and your operating system responds with mountain, serpent, justice, and somehow that dedicates how your kernel handles interrupt. And the documentation inside the TempleOS is the another ride altogether. Because everything is built on a ubiquitous hypertext system called DOLDoc, you will be reading a genuinely brilliant PhD level explanation about compiler design. And in the next paragraph, Terry starts explaining how God revealed the file system structure to him through a prophetic vision. It is the only computer science textbook in existence written mid-psychosis, and somehow it teaches you highly advanced engineering. And while you are exploring TempleOS, there are constant MIDI hymns playing in the background, low-quality 8-bit church music looping endlessly. It makes the entire experience feel deeply surreal and heavily isolating, and that isolation was very real. In his later years, Terry would live stream his coding sessions. Thousands of people would watch him explain complex operating system internals, argue with chat, rant about wild conspiracies, and occasionally drop genuinely genius programming insights. It was all fascinating, but it was deeply uncomfortable. Underneath the internet memes and the shock value was a serious ill man whose mind was collapsing in public. In 2018, Terry Davis was tragically hit by a train and passed away at the age of 48. He was homeless, but he was still working on TempleOS until the very end. But TempleOS survived him. Today, programmers still maintain forks of it. Operating system developers still study his source code because underneath the absolute madness, there was raw, undeniable engineering talent. TempleOS matters because it proves something that modern tech companies want us to forget. One person can literally build something massive, no venture capital, no team of 400 developers, no agile scrums. Just one unbelievable stubborn programmer building a machine exactly the way he thought it should work. I mean, I know it is not practical, it is not stable, but it is absolutely purest expression of personal computing ever created. One man's unfiltered, uncompromised vision translated directly into code. It is beautiful, it is tragic, and there will never ever be something like this again. And that is all for today's videos. See you in next video. Follow me for more such tech breakdowns.